All right, here we go, live again. Oh, I'm excited for this one. This one's going to be fun. Just kind of messing around, working on a piece of music while I get to kind of chat with all of you. Awesome. We've already got some people on. Welcome, Darlene. Welcome. I don't think you've been to one of my streams before, have you? I don't recognize your name, but welcome. If you have been to a stream before, welcome back. But yeah, here we go. So today, if you've been on the channel for a while, I know that there's a lot of new people this past couple of weeks. So welcome if you're new. But usually I drop a video on Wednesdays, and lately I've been doing kind of these emotion videos. But the most recent one, which has to do with kind of apocalyptic doom, like these huge, grandiose, divine type, epic pieces of music, I haven't been able to work on it as much as I would like to. So today, instead, I'm just going to stream while I put on the finishing touches, and then, yeah, just kind of answer your questions. So Darlene is actually Gregory Anderson. Welcome, Gregory. Thank you. Oh, yeah, now I recognize your name. Welcome. Thank you. One of my patrons. Wonderful. Wonderful. Awesome. So, yeah, as usual, the typical routine for the streams, I'm just going to work. If you've got questions, ideas, comments, suggestions, anything, throw them in the comments. I would be happy to see them. Welcome, William. Welcome. And thank you. I'm glad you're finding the channel helpful. So today, all right, you're gonna please be kind. The first kind of look at this is a very rough draft. So what I did is I started with my sketch up here. I made some changes to it for the orchestration, but then I ended up arranging it on Finale, which is what I normally like to do. If you've been on here for a while, you know that I like to make my arrangements in Finale, a notation first, and then transition into a DAW, so that way I can focus on just orchestrating, because if I orchestrate in a DAW, I tend to get carried away trying to get the types of sounds I want from my sound libraries. But, yeah, so this way, all I've done is I've imported the MIDI. All right, I've got the MIDI data in, I've assigned the instruments. This is going to be a very rough draft, but let's give it a quick listen, and then let's see how much better we can make it sound. Right off the bat. That is a loud bell. Very rough transition there. We'll have to address that. Very computery. That is the very rough draft we are working with here. All right. So like I said, all the MIDI notes have just been imported. All right. The instruments have been selected. And now it's my job to make it sound more realistic. So you notice that some of the instruments are louder than others. A lot of them sound more robotic and computerized than others. And now we need to try and make this sound a little more realistic. So Within the Ice, welcome, asks if you can see some of my sketch. Of course. So this sketch is actually what the focus of tomorrow's video is going to be on and how I came up with it. So we essentially have a primary theme. Let's see if I can find one of just the primary theme. I don't think I have just the primary theme right now, but I have a chord progression, and it has a very simple melody, if the keyboard will play. The melody goes... So then for the actual sketch, I took that simple melody and I arranged it with a couple different kind of textures. Now, for huge epic music, you can create a massive sound by using something called a linear texture, which is essentially, because in music, a texture refers to the number and types of layers in your music. The linear textures refer to different strategies of arranging just one single layer, usually a melody. So, for example, you'll notice here that I have the melody. I'll just do the first, I have the first motif. I have this actually doubled. And in between, I have additional lines using identical rhythms, but they're sticking strictly to chordal tones, which makes it sound like one kind of unified layer. And so for my sketch, it's just a piano. All right, so we'll listen to this first one. First section is a chordal texture. Second one kind of moves into more of a polythematic texture, which is a primary melody with a counter melody, then a little more dynamic bass line and even an ostinato on top. And then I had a secondary theme that I actually didn't end up using for this piece because I have to keep it short. But let's listen to it. I've got the different layers. I've got my melody, my counter melody, ostinato, and bass line. And I wasn't worried about musicality, just getting the sketch out. Then we have a counter melody, like a secondary theme that I ended up not using, just because I needed to keep it short, about a minute long. Then a return to the primary theme with just a simple homophonic texture, meaning melody, chords, bass line. If you want to learn more about the different textures, check out my playlist on advanced orchestration techniques. So, hopefully that was helpful within Thin Ice. Sorry, that's your name. Within Thin Ice. Hopefully that was useful. If you have any other questions about my sketching process, fire away. I'm always happy to talk about it. Usually, I always start chord progression first. It's just simple for me. I start with chord progression first, then I write a melody over the chord progression, and then I'll make a secondary theme if I need to, and then I'll just basically set up the general shape of my melody. All right, theme A, theme A, theme B, theme A, or maybe a rondo form, or whatever kind of structure I'm following. And then I'll address each section and give it its own texture, which, as a reminder, is the number and types of layers you're using. Then, with all of that written out for just MIDI piano, I'll switch over to finale, and I'll do my actual orchestration. All right, awesome. Welcome, Jay. Welcome. So Greg says, I think it needs more texture at bars 13 and 15 to give it something different. More energy in the middle section might help. Sure, maybe. We'll see. So what's that, 13 and 15? Yes, I would say trying to add a bit more. Originally, in the finale sketch, I had that section more of a transitionary phase. So let's see, 13 and 14. We'll notice starts with just the ostinato and the kind of counter melody in the bass line. Then a couple measures in, it doubles up on both of those layers with more instruments, starts creating a increasing size until boom, we arrive right here. And the plan was to have, as we return to the big kind of finale climax, I'd have kind of like a drum roll into it or something. But I've got the basic idea, and that's what I need to work with here. Is I'm going to get the very basics done. I'm going to balance everything, make it sound realistic, or as realistic as I can at the moment. And then once I have everything sounding the way I want it to as the basics, then I can start kind of nitpicking and getting more details down. my approach to orchestration and arranging and mockups is always minimal viable project first. So the idea is like, get the bare minimum. The bare minimum for me to say, this is happy, it's good enough. Then once that's there, then I can start kind of being more detail oriented. Awesome. So do you always create your sketch on a single track? Not always. Sometimes I'll have a separate track for my melody and my chords, my bass line. It depends how complicated the texture gets. Here, for example, this very first one, it's technically only 2 layers. So this whole chordal texture, the idea of the melody being doubled in octaves and then having identical rhythms in between that just stick to chord tones, that's technically considered 1 layer. It's a chordal layer. Again, check out my video on linear textures. It's part of my advanced orchestration techniques playlist. You'll probably find it helpful. And then the second layer is the bass line. So if I were to get much more complicated, which I can, didn't feel like it here, and I'll explain why in tomorrow's video, but I might branch off into other tracks. But for the most part, I try to keep things as simple as possible. And Zejo, thank you. Welcome. Thank you. All right, so let's start with the sketch. All right, let's try to make this a bit more realistic. First things first, the most important sound that I decided on for orchestration. So this isn't like a hard rule or anything, but for me and the arrangement I had for this, the choir is actually the most important kind of section that I want to really come out forward. So we'll listen to this real quick. Welcome, Bob. Welcome. Excellent question, Greg. So the number of layers, and Darlene Miley, his real name is Greg, just so people don't get confused. Greg, so when I talk about layers, I'm talking about distinct musical ideas in my arrangement. So, for example, the melody is 1 layer. But the chords are also another layer. Even though the chords have different lines involved, the chords are their own distinct idea. So that's a layer. Bass line is its own distinct idea, so that's a layer. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with how many lines, because if we talk about lines, then, for example, the choir here has 4 lines. It has a soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. So this would technically be 4 lines, but since this is just a chordal arrangement of the melody, meaning that it's the identical rhythm for each of these voices, but 2 of them are the melody and 2 of them are kind of chordal tones following very closely to the melody, it all sounds like one constant idea. When we listen to this, we're not thinking, oh, that's 4 different layers. We're thinking, oh, that's one musical idea. That's 1 layer, that's the melody. All right, so let's see here. Let's make this a little bit better. I need this to stick out a little bit more. So actually, let's start with the volume. All right, so I'm actually going to be following a process. I don't have one for choir, but I have a lot of my processes written out. This helps save time, so I'm not trying to, it's not like a formula. I don't have a rule telling me how to set up track CC7, but this is kind of my workflow, in other words. If you would like to learn more about my workflow and even a more in-depth look at how to make realistic MIDI mockups, I do have an ebook dedicated to teaching my approach available for sale on my website, because I've got to make a living somehow, right? But if you have any questions, feel free to throw them down below. But first, let's start out with CC7, which is track volume. This is how loud is this general track going to be. As a general rule of thumb, I like to stick between 13, and I view 13 as like pianissimo, a super soft sound, and 113 for being about fortissimo, or super loud sound. And then intervals of 20 in between for like finding different markers. So let's say we'll start with forte. So that's going to be around 93. Doesn't need to be completely accurate, but... let's see here. Awesome, my pleasure, Greg. Within Thin Ice, so the four-voice choir has the melody in octaves and chord tones the progression below. Yes, so, for example, we'll see soprano. This is my melody. Top line is my melody. You'll notice the line below it, it's not technically the melody. It's identical rhythm, very similar shape, and the other one doesn't necessarily follow the same exact shape, because you'll notice how here it stays in the same place instead of moving up. But every single note was taken from the chords that I originally wrote underneath the melody. So there are no chords at this first moment, but between the melody, using the identical rhythmic pattern, I've created the kind of chords. So this first chord is actually a G minor, which is kind of difficult to see in Cubase because it only shows sharps. But you'll see G, B flat, which is also A sharp, D, and B flat again. So B flat is the melody, but the other two notes come from the chord. They're chordal tones. And so basically, I'm playing my melody using a bunch of chords. So that's what it is. Again, if you want a very in-depth explanation of what this is and how to use it, check out my playlist, Advanced Orchestration Techniques. This is in the video linear textures. And the particular texture is called the chordal texture. I'll teach you how to write it, how to use it, its strengths, its weaknesses, and different reasons for why you add it to your music. So, we've got this general initial sound first. Since this is the most important sound, you know what, let's focus on creating a general sound. So I've got the dynamic level set to about forte. Let's add another one for expression, which is essentially kind of the same thing. It's what percentage of my volume am I using? I'm going to do 113 around there again. Let's... All right, so next I'm going to go through. I'm going to highlight each of the most important notes. And I'm kind of doing this just kind of, I'm focusing on strong beats and the most prominent notes. And all I'm going to do is for velocity, dang it, all right, let's try it again. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Little out of pitch here there. But basically, I'm just going to go in there and see which notes I emphasize naturally. I'm going to bring them up a little bit. In fact, let's just do this. Let's, instead of trying to do this with a pencil tool, let's just record it, shall we? We'll drop that an octave. All right, let's do this. Let's bring this up. I am not a strong piano player, so I'm probably going to make some mistakes, but it's okay. I'm going to focus on just kind of feeling it and which notes do I emphasize. The ones I emphasize, I'm going to hit harder with my keyboard. So there we go. I've got that. I'm going to clean this up a little bit with some quantization. All this means is I'm going to set the length of my shortest note, which is an eighth note. I'm going to hit quantize, and every note just got snapped right to the closest value. All right, so let's do that. Then we will delete this line. I'm going to just copy and paste it while making adjustments. We're going to need bring this one over here, actually. Going to copy and paste this. And then we're going to just drop it an octave. And I am just going to match this to each of the notes below so I can get the other line because they have identical rhythms, right? So then G, B flat, then D, then this will be D sharp, then G, D, then A. Actually, let's shorten this one. Then we'll shorten this one. Make sure it works. Then we need to make sure that they don't overlap, because if it's the same exact pitch overlapping, it's going to cause issues. Oh wait, actually they weren't overlapping. That was just B flat, D, B flat again, D, G, then A, or B flat, I guess, then F sharp. Hopefully this isn't boring to everybody. Sorry, this is the glamorous side of making things more realistic. Alright, so then we'll delete the bottom one. And all I'm going to do to make sure that these aren't completely identical is I'm going to highlight all of this. I am going to go to my presets that I've set up. I'm going to add 3% variability to the velocity to just randomize everything slightly. And then I'm going to also randomize my start points just slightly. So now let's listen to this first one. That was weird. That was a lot of clees or whatever in the row. Alright, what's going on here? Alright, so this one, that's why I listened to it. There we go. Alright, so now let's do the same for the tenors and basses, shall we? Oh wait, first questions. Let's see. So the four voice choir has the melody and octaves. Okay, I already addressed that one. Zijo or Ziho VR. What plugin VST program do you use for your choir? For the choir, this is a combination of Metropolis Arc 1 and Metropolis Arc 2. I believe for this piece I'm only using Metropolis Arc 1, which is I'm using the Victoria female choir and the Aurora male choir. Although there's another one in Metropolis Arc 2, got a choir, female and basso profundo choir. I also tend to use, where is it? I also tend to use a choir library by, it was like a $30 Epic choir library from Spitfire that I'm very happy with. But for some reason, my Spitfire apps weren't working too well when I was putting this together, so I just stuck with this. I think I just need to update my app. But let's see here. So tenors and basses, let's do the same thing again, shall we? Let's mute this whole thing. We're going to bring these up an octave, actually. And then we'll go. Let's down here. Let's mute these. Go to the beginning. Here we go. Go. I've got my kind of choir filled in. Let's quantize it so everything snaps to the right spot. And then I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to drop an octave. Make sure this is all in. And then I'm going to just kind of, large part, I'm going to follow. So this top one, I need this to be G. Then I need D. Then I need G again. So I'm going to need to bring that in. Really? Oh yeah, I guess that's, yeah. All right, G again. Then let's do C. Then F sharp. Then I need two Ds. Then I need an F sharp. Let's bring this in a little bit so there's not too much overlap. Then I need a G, a super long G. Then that's going to have actually bleed into another G, so shorten that. Make sure that they're not cutting each other off. Then D, then another G. Shorten that. And then D again. Then another G. Then B flat. Riveting stuff, isn't it? So cool. So much stuff going on. Yes. I mean, I love it. I just don't know if it's enjoyable to watch. But let's see here. I'm doing it anyways. It's fun. Let's do an A. Then F sharp. A. Then A again. So let's bring this in. And then another A. All right. So let's listen to, first let's actually do the same things. I'm adding just a little bit of randomness to the velocity of each one so that they aren't completely identical. Then I'm going to change their start points. Let's mute the sopranos and altos, and let's listen to this to see if there's any mistakes. Right off the bat, found one. What's going on here? There we go. Let's bring this one a little bit tighter, shall we? I like a little bit of overlap, but not too much. Hold up. Found another one. That's quite a bit of overlap. Okay, what's going on here? Let's do this. I wish these libraries would give me control over the syllables. That would be really nice, but oh well. Excellent. Awesome. So got some more questions. Awesome. Glad to help. Zeho. Welcome, Alex. Awesome. I'm glad you love the channel. Thank you. And sorry for the inappropriate question, but are you still using the East-West Symphonic Orchestra? I don't think that's an inappropriate question at all. It's related to music. That's what we're here to learn. I've actually never used the East-West Symphonic Orchestra. Don't have anything against it. I've always kind of been a Spitfire man myself. And then on occasion, I do have these two libraries. These were some of the first libraries I ever got. When I was first starting to learn, there was a huge sale and I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I need some sounds. Let's do it. So I bought these two. I love them. I don't get to use them all that often because I like to have control over each of my instruments. So you'll notice in orchestra, high strings, low strings. All right. In this one, it's a little bit better. High strings, mid strings, low strings. But even then, the low strings aren't just basses. They're octaves. And that's something I don't like about this library, is it's all octaves in some of these things. That's why I tend to gravitate towards Spitfire libraries. And specifically, I use Spitfire Studio Orchestra Professional. Because that gives me complete control over each and every instrument. I can control over violin 1, violin 2, Divisi instruments, all that kind of stuff. The ensemble patches are fine. Some people gravitate towards them. I just personally don't. And that's kind of just my style. Everybody's got their own unique style. Let's see. So I understand the gaps as breath marks, but don't understand why there's overlap of notes. Can you explain, please? Awesome, yes. So the overlap between notes just helps create a bit more of a legato sound. So you'll notice it doesn't sound like two notes playing at the same time, but it helps make it a slightly more smooth transition from note to note. This is more of a MIDI thing. Anytime two notes overlap, it just means make a smooth transition between the two, if it's set to legato. Not all libraries have legato. The gaps actually aren't for breathing. I'm not too worried about making this completely realistic, because this genre of music doesn't usually work with completely realistic music and performances. The gaps are mostly because if they overlap, then it won't start a new note. If this note ends here, but this note started here, we're going to miss the start of the note. So, for example, if we listen to this part only, you'll notice that even though there's two notes, we'll only... Where'd it go? Right here. Even though there's two notes, we're suddenly only hear one here. We only hear the F. The A doesn't get played because the two overlap. So I had to create a slight little gap to make sure they didn't overlap. There we go. So we've gotten that taken care of. Hopefully that answers the questions. Let's see. The MIDI notes are overlapping. The instrument and the MIDI notes are controlling. Still think it should be singing the previous notes. Exactly. Yep. So yeah, and this is all kind of just like an imperfect human performance, so it makes it sound a little more realistic. Let's see here. Main volume. Let's set this one to forte as well. That's 93 or around 93. We'll add velocity. We want to be using as much of that as possible, so I'll always leave a little bit of room for velocity. I'm not worried about making anything super... I'm not trying to get final products at the moment. Right now, I'm just trying to create a more balanced arrangement. I can be more detailed-oriented if this was a piece I was doing professionally, but I'm not. This is kind of more of an example piece. So let's add modulation, shall we? Modulation has another kind of volume kind of thing. Let's see. And I'll just follow the shape of my velocity. So we'll start out high. Then we'll come back down a little bit. We'll come back down. Go high. And then as I come through with the pencil tool, just following my velocity kind of pattern, I can listen to it. And I can make edits to it as I go, just to hear how things sound. So for example, let's keep this down a little bit, and so that it leaps up. And then we'll cut these short so that we don't have that giant swell. This library is just loving the E syllables, isn't it? Key, 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 C, 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 C. All right, let's see here. I'm not too familiar with these libraries, though, unfortunately. There we go. Let's delete these lines up here. Then I'm going to add my modulation data again, just following the general pattern of my velocity. Or I can also kind of think of how I would sing it. Where do I get louder? Where do I get quieter? kind of taper off at the end slightly. Let's listen to this again, just the men, and kind of, like I said, go through, listen for anything I don't like, and modify it. Ooh, something's not good there. Let's get rid of this overlap, so it doesn't have any swoops like it did. Let's listen to all of it together. Trying to see. I'm trying to see if there's a way to reset these syllables. What if I just exit out? What if I delete this library and then I come back to it? Victoria Female Choir, syllables, marcato long. Does that get rid of all the CCCCs? Not quite. Oh well. Alex says, wow, your orchestration is amazing. Where did you learn this? Thank you, Alex. Can you recommend a couple of books? Oh, yeah, I've got a bunch I can recommend. It depends on what you're kind of trying to learn. Maybe I'll do a video about, I've done a video about books I recommend before. For now, however, I would recommend checking out my playlists on orchestration. I've got two of them. One is an older one that kind of focuses more on instrumentation. And then I have another one that focuses a lot more on actual orchestration techniques. So I'd recommend starting there. Then, a couple good books. I'd say I've got a bunch on my back shelf over there. I'll have to do a video about that sometime. Maybe I'll do a live stream about learning. But I do have to make a plug. I have a book coming out. It was available back in August. There's like a limited release, but I have an actual textbook, 36 chapters from the very beginning, learning the basics of reading music and all the way to the end, how to orchestrate and make realistic MIDI mockups. 36 chapters, really cool book. It's going to be coming out soon. It's being published by Routledge. So I'm super excited about that. It's still in the editing process. All right, so I'm working with my editor, making changes. We're making it have more of a shift for film composing and telling stories with the music. But it's broken into 3 parts. Part 1 is how to make chord progressions that tell a story and capture emotion. Step 2 is about structure and melody writing, again with the emphasis of how to tell stories with the music, in particular how to portray emotions, characters, and worlds. And then the third part is all about orchestration. Unfortunately, I don't have a timeline for when that will be released, but I had to make a plug. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, so I'll make a video about that sometime soon. Yeah, maybe in the next live stream I'll have like a giant pile of my favorite books. But there's a lot of really good ones out there. For now, though, I would start with those playlists. That will be a good starting point. So, hopefully that answers your question. Next, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to reset. I'm going to, since the choir is the most important sound for me, I'm pulling this up. I'm going to be looking at this number here. All right, this tells me how loud it is. I want to get, since it's my most important sound, around -5 decibels at the peak. So right now the peak is minus 11.2. I want around minus 5. Now I could just change the chapter. I'd rather try not to avoid that though. So is there a way? I don't know how to use these libraries as well. Nope. Let's do that. How do I do this? Mixer. Here we go. Mixer. I want to try and change the sound library itself, not the... Let's try to go up 5 and see how that feels. I feel like that did nothing. That did nothing. All right, so mixer. I thought I went up. Let's see here. Mixer. Let's do the tree. I've got the tree up. Let's try going higher. Shall we? Oh, that did it, I think. So that's how I do it. The peak was about 2 decibels too loud. So let's go back to the mixer. Let's bring that down slightly. I wish there was more detail. Oh well, let's try it one more time. Brought it down slightly. Sorry if it's getting annoying. This is part of the process. You're gonna have to listen to your music a lot. There we go. Excellent. All right, so that's good enough. Next, let's do the tenor basses. Let's start off, oops, wrong button again, by just going to the same strategy we did before. Let's take our tree. Let's go up around 3 decibels. Let's listen to the whole thing while watching this meter to see if this also gets around the 6.7 minus 5 kind of range. So around minus 7, we can make it a little bit louder since I do want it to get closer to minus 5, but not much. There we go. That should do it. Let's just listen to the second half since that's where the loudest part is. We will listen. We will watch this monitor again. Perfect. All right, awesome. So now we've got a nice, strong choir. The next step is to start adding the strings. Since when I orchestrated this, I have the choir featured, and then each of the strings are kind of supporting it. So for example, violin 1 is supporting the sopranos. Let's start this again with just kind of a, here actually, let's check out my sheet music. All right, so these slur marks are essentially telling me how the bowing is going to work. If you want to learn more about how to make realistic string MIDI mockups, I believe I did a live stream about it. So check out my playlist, Live Lessons, where I basically, it's a series I used to do. I should do it more often again. But basically, it was a series where I taught private lessons the same way I do. I teach one-on-one lessons, but I understand not everybody can afford private lessons. So I have an option for subscribers to request lessons on specific topics. And then I would prepare a lesson plan. I would prepare a pamphlet of notes, all the kind of stuff that usually comes with my private lessons. And I just spend an hour teaching that topic to everybody on a live stream. One of them was how to make realistic MIDI strings, so check that out. Or if you'd like to learn about the whole orchestra, check out my ebook for sale on my website. Because again, I got to make a living somehow, right? So the whole point here is that the bows on the string have different kind of effects on the sounds. And the slur marks tell you how to do those bow marks. So I'm going to keep this off to the side. And I am going to use this as a guide. All right, so down bow is stronger. Down bows are weaker. Stronger, weaker, stronger, weaker, stronger, weaker, stronger, weaker, and then, yeah, it's basically, I'm going to take all of my weaker notes, my up bows, I'm just going to lower their velocity just a little bit. And for the ones where I have multiple notes in a row, I'm going to create a slight kind of transition to mark the movement of the bow. Where is it? Why can I not? There it is. All right, make that a bit more smooth. Make this a little more smooth. There we go. And then what we're going to do next is we will set my dynamics again. So main volume, let's set this around forte. Let's lengthen this. Let's do 113. No, I was 93. I'm doing forte, not fortissimo. Again, my ebook details every decision I'm doing here. Do that. I'll save velocity. Well, actually, I'll set up velocity next. Or expression, I mean. So that's one. I do this one. I do 113 to get about maximum effort out of my volume. And then modulation is quite simple once you actually have your bowing movements up. I'll do a higher modulation for up bow, down bows, lighter ones for up bows. So I'll just kind of follow again the pattern I made with my velocity. I'm going to use a wide marker. It doesn't matter if it's not everything is uniform. In fact, that's encouraged because it helps give a little more human playability. And then once I've got this, I'm just going to pick a much smaller kind of value, and I'm just going to connect the dots. I don't have to hit them exactly. Just want to follow the general shape. Then, just like we did with the last one, we are going to listen to the violins soloed to see if there are any issues with the sound. Go. That works well for us. For our purposes, it doesn't need to be perfect. Next, let's check this. Oh, more comments. Sorry. There is more energy in lower notes and larger wavelengths. True. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Sounds natural. I'll trust you. But yes, there are many different strategies to control energy in your music, but they all boil down to basically two ideas. The idea is getting bigger, making a larger sound, or adding more movement. So anytime you take an initial sound and you make it bigger, you add octaves, you add new registers, you add new instruments, new layers, that results in increased energy. Anytime you make it smaller by reducing octaves, removing layers, removing instruments, etc., that makes it lower energy. Same with movement. Anytime you do something that adds movement, it's going to add energy. So a faster tempo, more notes, more rhythmic ideas, etc., faster note values. That's all going to add energy, whereas the opposite will reduce energy. And I have a live stream video that you'll find interesting, which basically says all emotions in music is a combination of how dark your music is and how much energy it contains. For example, sad music, if you can describe emotion as sadness as kind of being a darker emotion and kind of lower energy, if you make music that's also dark and lower energy, it'll sound sad. I actually have an entire class that I teach about emotions in music. I am uniquely qualified to teach it because, if you're new to here, I was actually, I trained to be a therapist. I have significantly more professional training to be a therapist in a hospital setting than I do to be a composer. Oddly enough, I work as a professional composer instead. I'm happy with it. But I still love psych. I still love my background in kind of therapy and treatments of emotions and such. And so I kind of merged my passions into teaching tools that are used in therapy and evidence based practices to explore and understand emotion. And I use them as the basis for for portraying emotion in music. It's a topic I'm very passionate about. It's something I love to teach. I have a class about it. I have several videos about it. I do kind of videos like this one about it. And if you don't want to do the class, I have an ebook version. I know I'm pitching a lot of sales here, aren't I? I am not a wealthy man though, and I would like to be someday, hopefully. So I will continue to pitch my kind of products. All right, so check out the book. I think you'll find it helpful. It's awesome. Let's get back to this. Let's see here. We'll go. Let's listen to the strings. I want them to be a little quieter than the choir. Alright, so minus 14. That should be fine. Let's listen to it with the choir and see how they compare. Works. All right, so let's just kind of do the other ones then. I'll kind of do a speed run. Welcome, Visme, welcome. Music in the Middle Ages and medieval times. Fascinating topics. I love music history. For anyone who's a music history nerd like me, I cannot recommend enough the Great Courses series on Audible. I am not. Where am I? All right. I am not sponsored by them. I would love to be at some point, but I am not. But I just love them. All right, the courses are amazing. I believe the professor in particular I'm thinking of is Professor Randy Greenberg. I could be completely off about that name. But amazing courses on the history of music. Can't recommend it enough. I would recommend the first one, and my favorite one that I ever listened to is How to Listen to and Appreciate Great Music. It's an audiobook or audio lecture, I should say, on Audible, and it's amazing. Can't recommend it enough. And I've said that many times, and I'm distracting myself. Let's see here. Volume, around 93. Then expression. Again, I'm not going to focus on getting too realistic with this mock-up because it's only a 1-minute piece of music, and it's meant to be just kind of a sample, an example of this style. So I won't go too deep on this, but I'll make it work. Because you gotta take pride in your craft, right? So at this point, I'm just kind of doing the quick strategies. Once again, I'm using modulation to add a little more realistic performance, a little more breath and dynamic movement. Because modulation is essentially how your timbre changes with the volume. And again, I've done videos explaining this in more detail, but a real live musician makes subtle changes to their volume, their pitch, and their timbre when they're playing. So that's how loud the sound is. The pitch can be things like vibrato, like shaking the pitch up and down slightly. And then timbre is just like the color, the sound quality. And they make all of these very subtle transitions on each and every note they play. And so that's the trick for creating a realistic MIDI mockup, is you're trying to manipulate and mimic each of these kind of subtle changes that the musicians would make. And I am making much too liberal. I'm being much too liberal with my changes, so let's bring these up. There we go. We'll make it a bit smoother, then bring the whole thing up. All right, now let's listen to this. Watching this, around -14 is what I'm going for. Works. It's about what we want. The balance is nice. Again, the loudest instrument, the most important instrument, I typically try to go for around -5. Then everything else I balance based off how it relates to that most important sound. So since these strings are meant to support, to flush out, to strengthen, and make the choir a bit wider, I want them to be more subtle and supporting. So I have them about half the, well, it's not half the volume, but half the numerical volume of the decibels. So if I have about -5, I found around -14 for these particular libraries works well. Again, it's going to be different for everything you work on. I would say as a good general rule, most important sound, get it around -5, then compare everything to that. Let's see here. Ed Zielinski, this is very inspiring. One of the most informative and educational channels that I've found. There's always so much stuff I have to rewatch it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Ed. It really does help when I hear how helpful this channel is to people. Because a lot of work goes into it. It can be very frustrating at times trying to get things on time, having to work with the YouTube algorithm. But I really do love just having these chances to kind of talk with people and share my craft. I love music. I love it so much. I don't have a lot of people in my life that I can talk about it with. So it's just nice to be able to come here and have all you lovely people. So thank you, Ed. I'm glad you find the channel helpful. Violas are next. Again, kind of speed running this. We'll do following the bowing pattern I established in my sheet music, which is one of the many reasons why I like to start all of my arrangements, all of my pieces. I like to orchestrate them with notation software and then move into the DAW. Because I found after years of going with an orchestrate in the DAW approach that I just get choice paralysis. I get too focused on trying to get the sounds I want out of my sound libraries. And I end up spending less time than I need on making sure the arrangement itself is strong. So I just cut that out and I work with the notation software. I get the arrangement I want. And then from there, I can work on the actual mock-up and making it sound much more realistic. Let's see here, modulation. In fact, you know what? Something I haven't been doing? Let's add just a little bit of velocity variability, shall we? I don't think I've been doing that with these. Oh yeah, you can see how there's a bunch of straight lines there. The velocity is essentially how hard the musician is hitting each note. Or that that's what you're trying to mimic. And if I do, oh, yeah, I can do that without clicking in. If I have completely straight lines, that means every note is being hit with identical force. And that's just not how things work. Let's see, which ones have I done on here? Let's see. Let's do here. I already did this one. I did expression. So then the last one would be modulation. Let's see here. In fact, let's actually do this one as modulation since it's closer to my velocity. I'm going to go here. Then once again, I'm going to draw the general shape of my velocity. Up, down, up. I'm not worried about trying to stay too uniform between each one. I'm just creating a general shape. And then I can connect the dots. If you want another perfectly viable, and some people say superior, I don't know about that, but a very simple option is to work with your modulation wheel, your mod wheel on your keyboard if you have one. is a very useful tool. I find the issue with the mod wheel is it requires that you have an intuitive feel for how the music should be phrased. And if you haven't been playing music very long, or you're not a performer, or you haven't spent a lot of time around other musicians, that can be tricky and seem a little overwhelming at times. So the pencil tool is perfectly fine as well. The violas are a little loud. So this is Feckenstein high strings. Oh, it doesn't matter what they are. I'm just going to bring it down by a smidge. All right, and that should do it. Let's unmute the tenors and basses. Excellent. All right, let's do this with the basses. Oh, wow. All right, it's already 4:01. I'll only be on here for a couple more minutes because I have to, I'm meeting up with someone for dinner. So if anyone has any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm going to work on making the cello a little more realistic. And by the time we're done with this, I'll call it a day. So any questions, throw them below. Speak now, forever hold your peace. I know I just said that, but I said it again. So there we go. What you can do about it? Let's see here. Make it a little more random. Not a lot random. Let's see here. Let's go to, where is it? CC7. There it is. All right. So it looks like we've got a couple questions, a couple comments at least. Alex. Oh, and I also wanted to ask. I watched your videos about orchestration and wondered, are these tips suitable for all instrumentation? That is, as a composer, I'm used to not being limited to the usual timbres and using many different VSTs. They have quite specific timbres, and it becomes difficult to arrange my piano sketch. Depends on which kind of playlist you're looking at. If you're looking at the advanced orchestration techniques, yes, those are all aimed at any kind of genre of music. They're all genre non-specific. For example, the three traits, the three pillars of great orchestration being balance, focus, and separation, and the strategies you use to achieve them. That is for any genre of music. You can do that in songwriting. You can use that in electronic dance music. You can use it in film music. You can use it in folk music. The ideas aren't so much just orchestra specific. They're just about managing the different layers and ideas of your music. Same things, the types of textures. You find that all the time in all genres of music. They have different types. Maybe it's a melody and chords. That's very common in pop music. Sometimes it's a little more lush and, shall we say, like soundscape approached, as in the case with lots of electronic music and a lot of film music. That being said, I haven't done a video on the soundscape textures anymore yet. I had about 2 or 3 more videos that I wanted to do for the Advanced Orchestration Series playlist. Unfortunately, the last soundtrack I worked on was taking so much of my time I had to take a break from YouTube. And at that point, when I had come back a couple months later, those videos just weren't doing well. The Advanced Orchestration Technique videos didn't seem to have a lot of interest from people. So at that point, I thought, it's complete enough as it is. I'll just work on something else. However, there are a few more videos I'd like to add. So if people are interested, I'd be more than happy to kind of continue that series and finish it. So yeah, let me know what you think. So yeah, Alex, the Advanced Orchestration Techniques videos, those are non-genre specific. Those should work for any kind of style of music you want to work with. Welcome, Matt. Welcome. Matt Lou's favorite voicing for strings. I like root, fifth, and third up an octave. Ooh. You know what? I don't really think I have a favorite voicing approach for strings. Now you got me feeling self-conscious about not having one. Yeah, I'd say I don't really have one specifically. But I would say I do genuinely like to have a combination of open voicings and closed voicings. So normally it's like you have all the strings as close as you can, or they're all kind of spaced out. I like to have little sections, like violin and violin 1 and 2 kind of being close together up here. Then drop it a bunch, you got like the violas and the cello. And then drop it again, you've got the basses. I like small little clumps, which is kind of what I've done in this piece. But yeah, I don't think I have a specific kind of go-to voicing. It depends on the style or the genre I'm working with. But that's interesting. So minor thirds in an octave, or let's see here, root fifth and third up an octave. That's a pretty safe standard. That's kind of a that follows the rules that you'd find from the overtone series for kind of chord spacings. So it's definitely a solid approach. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, again, check out my orchestration playlist, Advanced Orchestration Techniques. It'll explain all kinds of the guidelines for like chord spacings and such. And the overtone series and what it is and how it impacts it. Let's listen to the cello, and then that'll be it. We'll call it a day. Any other questions? Oh yeah, Alex. Greg, thank you for letting us watch your work. My pleasure. I really enjoy these live streams. I really do. It's fun to talk to people, so I'm not just in a room by myself. And Alex asks, and the last question, do you know Toby Fox? No, I don't. Is that another YouTuber, a musician, a composer? No idea. I'll look him up. Toby Fox. Making a note. Thank you, Alex. I'll check him out. Let's see here. Cello again. We're checking here. Around minus 14. Alright, so the cello can stand to get a little louder. Not much. There we go. That should do it. And we'll call it a day. I still have a lot of work to do. I've still got to arrange the tuba. I've still got to get the basses in there. I've got to fix the percussion. And I've got 2 more sections that I need to finish. So this is probably going to take me a while. And then I've got to put the video together. But the goal is still to have this video up tomorrow. Like, the topic is how to make big, awesome, epic, kind of doomsday type music. Kind of like the Attack on Titan type music. So keep an eye out for it. I hope you find it helpful. Thank you to everybody who stopped by. All right? Keep studying, keep working hard, and keep writing new music, my friends. I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye-bye.